I've been making this soup and gradually refining the recipe for over 20 years now, and so if you're Georgian and watching this, keep in mind that I already know that this is not the authentic home version. It is a delicious and refined fine dining restaurant version that has received high praise everywhere I've worked in Russia. It is much more work to make than the traditional home-style Georgian version, but your extra work will be rewarded with intense, complex, and rich flavors that are why this recipe is a winner.
Get the lamb here, and this is going to be pretty untraditional the way we're going to do this. I got a bowl. I'm adding a tablespoon, measure it, a tablespoon of coarse salt, and they use Turkish smoked pepper, which is virtually impossible to find. I'm using Spanish smoked paprika. This will work just fine. Give it a little mix here first. And then we're going to coat the lamb with it before we begin frying this at a high temperature. You're going to have to work with it a little bit to get it to stick to the sides as much as you can. We'll just throw the rest of it in with the lamb after it starts cooking. Just showing it. Really what you want to cook this in is unfiltered sunflower oil, but that's going to be pretty hard for you to get. So we'll just use regular sunflower oil. Unfiltered sunflower oil actually has a pretty distinctive taste, and it is part of the flavor, but if you can't get unfiltered sunflower oil, don't feel bad. It's pretty hard to find. Maybe in a Russian specialty store. There goes the rest of the salt and paprika on top there, by the way. I'm going to brown this real well. I'm not going to make you watch the entire process here because I think you know how to brown meat, but I'll show you. After a few minutes, you should have a lovely brown, evenly browned piece of meat. You're going to put back in the bowl. In the bottom of this pot, we got quite a lot of burnt bits, so we're going to get rid of all this. This is trash now, and we're going to clean the pot out and start it. Okay, so the pot's cleaned. I'm going to add peanut oil now. Peanut oil to this again. Not really traditional, but it's going to give good flavor in the end. It's smoking already. I'm going to add about half of the tomato sauce. Let that cook away without stirring it for a few minutes, just like when we're making the Italian pasta sauce. Same technique. Just let it cook without stirring it for a few minutes. And when you see bubbles are getting smaller, it's got kind of a solid surface on it, I'm going to put half a teaspoon of sugar. I'm going to put the onions on top, but you don't need to cut these up real fine. Just large pieces is in fact actually works better in this case. Reducing the heat a little bit to number 6 on a 1 to 10. We're going to cook this until the onions start to get soft. It shouldn't be more than 5 minutes. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. The onions are soft, and I'm going to add 4 of the garlic cloves. I just crushed them quickly under a knife. The meat goes back in now, along with whatever juices might have collected from it, and enough water to cover it. Yeah, a little bit sticking up, that's okay, because we're going to be turning this around in the mixture, and it's going to have a lid on it. Yeah, I'll add a little bit more water in a minute. I'm also going to use this Camilli Sinilli. This is one of the keys to this dish, and it's going to be really hard for you to find. Sorry about that. There's some alternative mixtures you can make that kind of substitute this, but the problem is that the authentic stuff, like I have here, uses ingredients that you can't buy. They're only made and grown and sold in Georgia, in the nation of Georgia. So you cannot get the authentic flavor without getting something that's actually imported from there. But you can still get good flavor, and you can use one of the substitutes. Okay, I'm going to add just a little bit more water to this, and then I'm going to put a lid on it and start simmering. I'm using a pan lid that has a little hole, you can see that, drilled through it. This is actually perfect for this because it lets steam out, but at the same time it's basically covered. If I were to use an ordinary pan lid and leave like this, a lot of water is going to come out. I'm going to have to keep adding water, and the flavor won't be as good. So try to find a lid that's got a little hole punched in it like that. Going on, I have here, this is cilantro roots. It's just the regular herb part would be out here, but I've got the roots. These have a separate name in both Thai food and Georgian food, some other cuisines that use the roots specifically. I'm going to soak these in warm water, and mostly to loosen the dirt that's stuck to them, to get rid of that. And I'm just going to leave them in here for about half an hour, let all the dirt loosen up and come off. You can see how cloudy this water is getting already just after a few seconds. You don't want to eat the dirt, but you definitely want these roots. They have very strong and unique flavor. Okay, this has been simmering away now for over 2 hours, about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I'm just going to take a look at it. Looks pretty good. I have not stirred it or done anything with it. I've just kept it at a simmer for about 2 hours and 20 minutes. I'm checking the meat, kind of feeling it. You can get a fork if you need to, but I can tell this while this meat is chili, piece of cinnamon stick, peppercorns, cumin seed. These have been soaking for about half an hour now. You can see all the dirt they left behind. And I'm going to set these over here, obviously throughout this. Okay, into the same bowl, I'm going to put this meat, which is now quite tender, and let that rest. Then we're going to begin the salt. And if you were Georgian, you would use all of the fat here. This soup normally has like a big thick layer of fat floating on the top of it, but if you're not Georgian, you're probably not into that. So I'm going to have to use a fat separator here in batches. I'm going to begin using the fat separator here. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to begin filling this, but leaving the fat behind, or at least a lot of the fat behind. Still going to pick up more fat later because the lamb's not done cooking. I'm going to get rid of a lot of the fat this way. We're also going to throw in those cilantro roots that we put in, and the spice mixture that we ground up. And of course more of the stock in, more of the liquid that the meat cooked in, and it's coming up too. I'm going to pour more through here, and you're going to actually put all the solids that the strainer caught. These are also going to go into the blender. The only thing we're really getting rid of here by using this fat strainer is the fat. Now, just to clarify here, I am taking the solids from this and I'm putting those into the blender bowl as well. I'm also putting 4 cloves of garlic in there. And make sure you have a cloth over your blender when you do this. And then it goes back through another strainer into the new pan, because the blender won't be sufficient to get all of the solids out, especially that coriander root is going to leave some solids. You don't want that. Okay, finally we got all of this. Now we're going to add the rest of that tomato sauce. And we're going to begin reducing this before we add the lamb and the rice, the other things. We're going to actually start the reduction here. We want to thicken this up some before we add the lamb, because we don't want. And we have the meat that's finally cooled down. You just take this off the bone. It's so soft now you can do a lot of it just with your bare hands. You don't even hardly need a knife. You just make sure that you don't leave any little bones or gristle fragments in it as you do this. It's trash. And the rest of this is pretty much meat, but we'll have to pick through it to be sure. As you go through this, you find some large pieces that are just solid fat. And if you're Georgian, you would leave these in. This is some of the best tasting parts if you're Georgian. But people in Western Europe and the United States and large other parts of the developed worlds, large giant chunks of fat in your food are probably not what you're looking for. So try to pick through this. Okay, this is all meat here. You're going to just take a knife and cut it into manageable pieces. You don't want to shred it or cut it into tiny little bits, but you don't want pieces that are bigger than would fit in anybody's mouth. And it's going to break up a little bit more anyway as it cooks further. But this is good. And the rest of the fat, well, not much we can really do with this. Okay, when it's reduced by about 1/4, we're going to add the lamb meat that's been picked through back into it, along with the pomegranate molasses. And rice. And keep cooking this uncovered. And come back to it in a little bit. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.